Ah, I guess we're here now. Welcome to my cellar. Sometimes I'm the curmudgeon. Sometimes I'm Grandpa. However, tonight, I am the curmudgeon. Have a few odd questions to deal with and answer, and try not to wax too nostalgic. How about those women soccer players? Man, oh man, that was some World Cup. It is a game, remember. And those of you who follow what I babble on about sometimes know I'm a big soccer fan. Used to be a coach and an announcer and a referee. Anyway, let's see. We'll start off with something easy. Oh, well, the end of this month, July 31st, I believe, is my Kickstarter kicking off. This is with World of Game Design and Old Guard Games and Myth Horde, and I don't know how many other companies. Anyway, what we did was we took the Curse of the Weaver Queen and I expanded it. And I had simply hinted in the first one that I wrote that if you found these, you might want to try this, or whatever. So I said, okay, you found them. Now here's the other half of the adventure, and go see how it works. And I think you'll enjoy it. And we've got some other stuff connected to it, as these companies always do. It's a bundle all at once, no stretch goals, nothing like that. It's like, here's the package. This is what's in it. You want it? Cool. Hey, dig it. I hope you will. I think you will. It comes to a sense. Well, it comes to there is a conclusion. How satisfactory it is depends on how well it comes out for you, but it can be quite satisfactory. We used the term, I believe the second one was called, well, my working title was The Benison of the Weaver Queen, opposite of Curse, her blessings, if it all works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter. Everybody's dead. Anyway, that's the end of the month. Let's see. Oh, someone had a question about St. Cuthbert. St. Cuthbert, one of the very few NPCs, PCs, call it that's named. Xylarthan being the magic user of the other one. Anyway, it says in the Greyhawk box set, says he holds a wooden billet. What is a billet? The only definitions I can find are a soldier's quarters or an unfinished piece of lumber or metal. Well, actually, a billet is also a position and a table of organization and equipment. You are assigned to a unit and you fill a billet. But in this case, it's just Gary being a wise guy and using a fancy word as we were wont to do. It's just a chunk of wood. He's just got a hunk of wood. That's all it is. Half-turned table leg, whatever, doesn't matter. Big stout stick. But that's all it was, a billet. Gary, long before I knew him, liked to use words that he knew people were going to have to look up in some cases, and he stretched your imagination and your vocabulary at the same time, and that's what a billet is. St. Cuthbert just clobbers you with a hunk of wood. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Cuthbert doesn't need it. Okay, there's a couple, three here. I'm going to save the big long one for last. Please describe what those early Gygax D&D sessions looked like. How many players generally did Gary DM behind a screen? Did you have a grid and minis of any sort? I'm curious if the physical things have changed a lot. And then there's another question that asks about his specific style. Hey, here to use the screen to create a disembodied narrator-like atmosphere. Was this true? Did he have anything else that he would surprise you with? There wasn't such a thing as a DM screen. The first practical DM screens was the hard board out of Outdoor Survival, which was the game that was recommended to be used. That map was, if you're going outdoors, use this map as a frame of reference. And we would all put that thing in front of us, fold it, half fold it, put it in front of us. That was a screen. That was the first screen. To be honest, I couldn't tell you if I thought of using it first or Gary thought of using it. I don't know. But at some point, we both realized that we were playing behind a screen, and the screen was actually the Outdoor Survival board. So no, he didn't do any, to my knowledge. And to be honest, I didn't get to play with Gary as often as I would have liked for a number of different reasons. And I never played with Gary just for fun. It was always in a play test session, a test session, a writing session that we were working out something. It was never just for I never had a formal character in the Greyhawk campaign. All my characters as such were ended up being NPCs in modules. Gary did not set the stage. We didn't have dark lighting, nothing like this. The best Gary probably could have come up with back when he was just, when he's living in his house, and there was a whole lot of them living in that house. If he could get a bedroom, Gary was big on telling stories to his children when they were smaller, and he'd gather them all together and spin a yarn. And so I'm sure that some got done like that. Some got done around the table. When he was playing with us, it was, I don't recall ever having a test session where we were in the basement. Most of the test sessions that I was involved in were after we had moved to the gray house, and we played downstairs of the gray house, 736. So there wasn't anything special. In fact, we would set up some nights we would set up a card table. Other nights we'd set up a plywood board on a couple of hobby horses. And, so we could get a big enough table to group around, because if we were playing, 6 or 7 players. How many players were normally in Gary's home group, his campaign game? I don't think more than 6 or 7 ever, and it was probably usually more around 4, from what I've been told and what I know. When we were testing, we'd get as many employees as we could possibly dragoon into it. And some nights we would still be playing two player characters each, working through. When I say testing, we were seeing, is it too tough? Is it too hard? What are the odds? This is pre-computer. We couldn't sit down and run a little program and see, what are the likelihood of a group of certain size running through this, facing these, couldn't do all that. So everything had to be done out manually. We had fun. We were serious. Oh, Gary was a very serious DM. Again, we were I'd probably have to say every time that he ran a game, it was because we were testing something, and we were serious about it. This was something that was near and dear to us and important to the company. But he also was one of the most frustrating DMs. He ran a lot of the initial playtesting for Metamorphosis Alpha. And as I've said before, we spent a couple of nights figuring out that the neatly stacked wood in the corner was actually a staircase going up to a door that we now discerned an outline. And he didn't give you anything. Let's put it this way. He didn't give you anything. You had to ask. You had to look. You had to challenge. That's the way the game was played then. You were expected to challenge. You were expected to ask. You didn't expect to have information handed to you on a plate. You listened carefully for, a clue maybe or something of that nature that would give you a better place to ask a question. Atmosphere, no. Atmosphere was the front room of what became a hobby shop. And well, at first was a hobby shop, so there wasn't any atmosphere there, except, hey, here we are again after dinner. Let's get busy. Let's have some fun. There were other nights that we weren't playing. Gary didn't have a lot of time to play a lot of games that weren't involved in testing or trying something out. He didn't get to play much just for fun. The rest of us made time to play for fun. We had sessions where we were playing at Mike Carr's house, at his apartment, couple, 3 times a month, flying and fighting the skies games and the campaign and what have you. Gary was horrible. Oh God, he was an atrocious punster. Oh, sitting through his, if he was particularly feeling punny that night, oh my God, it could be excruciating for those who didn't like puns. And when he knew you didn't like puns, he just directed them all at you. So that was that was playing with Gary some nights. Keep in mind that a lot of times when we were playing, we were testing, we were polishing, we were buffing. In the middle of something, we'd somebody make the remark of, oh, this could be that, or we could add this, or so we were playing, but not so much with characters we had our hearts and souls invested in, but rather, I'm rocking. That's probably driving you crazy. There goes the blood sugar. We weren't playing with characters we had our hearts and souls invested in. So there was a little more levity, perhaps, and a little more insouciance with how we played the characters, but not reckless, because that wouldn't serve the purpose of the testing. Now I got this question's got a whole lot of questions in it. And first off, he addresses something about he's not gotten his dice yet. Well, contact me again directly, and I'll make sure you do. My sponsor has been very good at keeping track of new subscribers and sending them the requisite information on how to get your dice. Because all you got to do is pay the postage and tell us where to ship it, and then off they go. So anyway, he'd like to ask me a few questions about, and then he's got an influence. I'm going to read all through these, and then I'll go back. Okay, this is a bunch of stuff here, and I've been thinking about it for a while now, a couple hours anyway. Influence, the current state of game design, and legacy. Okay, well, the legacy we'll get to. Firstly, what is it like, or how does it feel, or how do you ever think about how your contributions have influenced the lives of multitudes of gamers while you're with TSR? And you have continued to do so in the years leading up to the present. Secondly, what are your thoughts on the current state of game design in general? Do you like where the hobby is going design-wise, or do you see it, say, overcomplicated or bloated? Lastly, what qualities would you like to be remembered for once you're gone from this earth? And let's see. Oh, he's referring to one of my smart-ass can sleeves about dumb questions. So it's okay. All right, let's see. Where do we want to start here? Current state of game design. I think it's wonderful. Why do I say that? Because there's lots of them coming out, and lots of people with game ideas. And some of them are going to stink. And a few of them are going to be okay. And a few of them are going to be worth looking into. And a few of those are going to be great. And the natural weeding out process. The more grassroots games coming up, the more they're going to make it through the funnel and through the furnaces and through the forge and become great games. Game design has always been willy-nilly all over the place, helter-skelter, crunchy rules, slick and easy rules. Let's see, there's another part of this. I'm gonna back up here a second, because I remember there was another question I wanted to address, and so I'm gonna back up a second and address that. And somebody had asked about, how things have changed, and well, we didn't have screens in the beginning, and we made our own. No, we didn't have 1-inch squares or 1-inch hexes, and no, we didn't have figures. Not in the very, very beginning. No, we didn't have them. They weren't out there. Nobody was producing them because we were in a brand new field. And what we did have, we found from medieval lines or Dark Ages stuff, and that's when we started, finding a figure here and a figure there. And then we weren't building armies; we were looking for one-offs for ourselves. And sometimes it was just to feel good about looking at yourself. And really, it was people just had them. They were like talismans or tokens. We didn't put them out on the board and fight, but we all had our character up in front of us. So that's different a lot. And then back to this question. Game design. Are they overcomplicated or bloated? No. Games will find their own markets, and if there's sufficient market or sufficient backing, the game will succeed, depending upon your definition of success. Really awful games don't get published unless it's a vanity project. The guy publishing his own game. Awful games don't get other people's money tied up in it. What seems like a good idea when it goes into production doesn't always pan out when it hits the stores or the books, wherever you get yours. That's always the way it's been. There's more gamers now, so there's more games. Some are good and some are bad. I've said before, just because it does well on Kickstarter doesn't mean it was a good game. Just meant it was very well marketed and or had a name behind it or whatever. It's a self-leveling thing. Some people like gritty rules with lots of detail, and they'll be gravitated. And if there's enough of them, that game will find a niche market. It'll end up on drive-through RPG, and people will buy it that way. And the guy that wrote it will make a little money, and that's fine. That's great. I've found some really interesting games online. One that I take to two cons a year now, as it is, and run, and that's Dirt Track Saturday Night. And I found it on a PDF as a PDF file. And because all these people are saying, "Hey, I can make a game about this, and I can make a game about that," that means that if they get sufficient publicity or spread or dispersal, it'll find people that have that interest. For instance, my interest in dirt track racing and comes from, you know, I was a huge, I have still love to play Circus Maximus. And it just is a natural thing to get into dirt track racing. For me, I like, you know, going around and rolling dice to see how fast I go all around. I like that. So I do it. I'd like to see more simple game design. I'd like to see a movement back to the old pocket games where GEV and Ogre and some of those play it out in 20-minute games. I'd like to see more of those, just because I admire that micro design. The market is so diverse. There's so many products out there demanding, you know, your attention for your money, that some days I wonder how any of them sell enough. And thank God for Kickstarter. Kickstarter says, okay, if I can raise this much, I know I can produce this many, and by God, this many copies of my product will be put into the world. Yay, Kickstarter. Seriously, I mean that. Great. Great. Not everybody had the opportunity to have their stuff put out by a company. And so this is great. Let's see, current game design wise, complicated or bloated. All right. I'm going to answer the other two parts of this kind of in one without trying to sound maudlin or too full of myself. But the parts about legacy and what do I like to be remembered for? I've said this. I've told this story before. I was sitting in the second Hobbit movie and had a nice buzz on. I was probably with a friend and just, you know, digging it, eating it up, and it washed over me that I was sitting there today eating all this up because of what we had done all those years ago, what Gary and Dave had come up with, and then what Gary and I and Brian and the rest of them that came later had created and marketed and whatever. Yeah, part of that's my fault. A couple of years ago, I had a 50th class reunion, and it's extremely curious. As well known as I am within the gaming field and by people all around, I graduated with a huge graduating class, over 700 students, and virtually nobody from those days knew about what I was doing later on. Two reasons. Well, there's a 4-year gap there. And while they went on to college, those of us that went on to college or went on to jobs or whatever, and then those poor fat bastards that got drafted. I'd enlisted and I'd gone in for 4 years. And so I came out 4 years older and had a radically different perspective. And they were, by the time I got out and started into college, they were out of college and starting in their careers and that. And I'm doing goofy shit playing games. And a couple of years later, I'm helping create something that became a tidal wave force in our culture. But nobody knew it because I didn't even have the reputation of being a gamer in high school. I was just kind of a nerd and a wise ass and a smart ass that somehow managed to always get real good grades and pass tests without working at it. So I wrote this letter essay about when I lay my head down at night and what I know when I lay down and close my eyes and smile. And I sent it to the, he was the class president in our senior class. We were friends, but I sent him this letter and said, yeah, I just wanted you to read this. And yeah, I know what I've done. I know what we did. I know that Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax had an idea together between them. They conjured up this product that I had a hand in bringing to the world, and it did some amazing things, and it changed our culture, and it's therapeutically helped some people, and it's been a catharsis for other people that have come out of their shell and learned how to interact with other people and overcome their shyness. Yeah, I know we did all that. But if I sat around and thought about it all the time, I'd get a big fat swelled head. I'd rather be the smug sucker that's sitting in the mall watching the crowd go by, looking at them all carrying on about some new fantasy thing or whatever, and just smile to myself and go, yeah, okay. You know, a few years back, that was, you're welcome, because a few years ago that wasn't an option. So yeah, I've met dozens and dozens of people that have told me what an effect the games had on their lives personally, and their confidence and their blooming and their personality traits forming and whatever, and the trouble they've stayed out of, and the inspiration it gave them to go on and do other neat things. And yeah, I'd be a big damn liar if I said that didn't please the shit out of me. I'm very proud to have been a part of that little bitty snowball up on top of the first mountain that we got rolling. You bet your ass I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that so many people have found pleasure in what I've done. My legacy is part of that. What do I want to be remembered about? Gary said, and I certainly wouldn't crib from Gary. Gary said that he just wanted to be remembered as a guy who liked to play games, and that's great. And so he's already got that one. But I think I'd like my legacy to be more in keeping with what I did when I started doing game magazines. And I'd like my legacy to be, I was the guy that told you about all those neat games. That would be a great legacy as far as I'm concerned. I was the guy. That's what I did with Dragon and Little Wars and Adventure Gaming and Gygax magazine. I just wanted to tell people about, man, check out this really good game. I think it's neat. I hope you do too. But if you don't, that's okay, because here's these other two you can go look at. I like telling people about games and exposing them to games, and I've got enough of an ego to pick through and say, hey, if I think it's pretty cool, maybe you want to look at it too. Not you will like to look at it, but maybe you will. I could have an enormous ego issue. I've won, awards, and people remember me for wonderful things, and I'm very gratified to be remembered. A couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, when I got cancer, I was overwhelmed by the support from strangers that I'd never met. That's very sobering, and it'll sure knock the stuffings out of you if you're full of yourself. Because you should realize that you're not full of yourself. You're full of what the fans, the followers, the people that just are interested in the industry. We're full of what you put in us, not ourselves. And my legacy, I'd like people to say that despite what I could logically claim to be responsible for, I was humble and I was modest about it. that would be a wonderful legacy as far as I'm concerned. That, yeah, I did this, I helped do this. I'm one of the godfathers, the grandfathers of this, and I didn't go around telling everybody all about it all the time. That'd be a good legacy. Let's see what else we got to talk about here. Oh, have I ever considered resurrecting the TPK Curmudgeon for a con event? And then I could run the Wheel of Blame and the Wheel of Deathless Bob. Deathless Bob. Oh, that reminds me. I just had occasion to speak about Deathless Bob again. I got an email from a journalism student at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, my alma mater. An email had been to me and to Tom Wam and Paul Stormberg and a couple of other names that I didn't recognize. And he was tracking down the fact that he'd heard a rumor that SIU Carbondale's Game Club had a cornerstone position in D&D. And so when I saw who he'd sent it to, I knew who could answer that and who couldn't. The only two that could answer it were the only two that were there, and that would have been Tom Wam or me, but Tom Wam didn't play D&D with me. Tom Wam and I became friends in any event. So I called him, left him a message. He got back to me, and we sat down, we talked, and I pointed out that yes, it was true. In fact, I'd been involved in the game club since before I brought D&D to the group, and that I'd used the game group there as playtesters for TSR, and that ideas that were formed or conclusions that were reached in Carbondale may well at some point later date become part of the rules. You know, yes, we were one of the early playtesters groups. There was a group in Minneapolis, there was a group in Lake Geneva, and there was me. Now, there were other people playing. Not a lot, but there were other people playing, but we were the ones who were in constant contact back and forth and sharing ideas and honing and refining the rules. So, yeah, that was a fun conversation with him. He's gonna give me some help, and maybe we can look up a few of those people, and maybe get in contact with them again. I don't do TPK games anymore at the cons. Number one, it's a lot of work to keep writing new adventures just to run at a con. And I've got so many already written that I'm going to polish up to publish. I don't need to write any more, but though I do have a couple, 3 on the back burner, that's it. And so I'm going to polish. I've run these before. If I were to go and run adventures at a con, I'd have to take a different one for every one that I've gone, and I'd have to tell people what it was, and people that had played in it before couldn't play in it, wouldn't want to play in it again. And I wouldn't want them playing in it again if they remembered it well. And too much work. So what I do now is the Wheel of Blame. And what prompted me to remember all this was a mention of Deathless Bob, because it's kind of, the Wheel of Blame in some ways is an homage to Deathless Bob, because almost everybody comes out alive. There's only been 1 or 2 instances where there were people that didn't make it to the end of the wheel. And I've run it now many, many times. So it's kind of an homage, because I just keep giving them potions and you're alive, keep going. So, you know, if I was to name my universal elixir, my universal antidote, it would be probably called Deathless Bob's. Fix it all. So I run games now to have fun, which isn't to say that killing mass groups wasn't fun before, because I had a lot of fun, and most of them seem to have fun doing it. But I thought, well, let's have more fun, and then we can all talk about it afterwards. And so now we do different things. I don't want to really do the killer stuff anymore. That's too easy. It's too easy. I was asked the other day by the same journalist about designing, and do I design stuff to be killer? My design philosophy. And no, I don't design anything to be killer. And we were talking about death trap adventures like the Tomb of Horrors. And everything I've created has always had a weakness, a vulnerability. Whether it's through belay, which is a monstrous, horrifying thing that makes your sphincter clink, but it has that little area behind the sail that it's particularly vulnerable at, or it's a way to crock a spell, or anything else. There's always been a way around it, a nullification of some sort, an Achilles heel, call it what you will. Otherwise, what would be the point? It'd be real easy for me to just sit and make up stuff that would kill you. I just kill you with dragon after dragon after dragon. Right? So, that would be the end of it. That's no fun. It's more fun now to have laughs. It's more fun to make people think their way out of problems, laughing, than running for their lives, pouring sweat. So I don't do that anymore. And as an example, you'll find out if you're coming to AppleCon in September. And I have an announcement for any gamers in the Quad Cities area. Now, the Quad Cities is that strange part of the Mississippi River that actually runs east and west. You can take a sunset cruise into the sunset, if you time it right, on one of the river boats. Watch the sun sink into the river, because that's where it goes, east and west there. Anyway, I'm going to be back there in September, the week after I come back from AppleCon. Now, I've been told there's a game store, and I reached out to them twice and haven't even had the courtesy of a response back. Because I'm going to be back there because my wife's going back for her 50th anniversary, her 50th reunion of her nursing college. And significant others are not invited to the big formal dinner Saturday night. So I thought, well, I'll go find a friend at a local game store, reach out, run a game, play a game, ask to be in a game, find a game to play in my home area, because I'm from the Quad Cities. Moline High School, class 67. So's my wife. Anyway, haven't even heard back from them. So, and I'm going to put this on Facebook. Anybody from the Quad Cities that's got free time that Saturday night? Because, yeah, Saturday night's the banquet. I'll double check that. And you got a place we can go. It's got good food. Or we can bring in some good food and have a good time and play some games. I'll even run a game. Get in touch. PG-13 or older, preferably grown-ups. But PG-13 allows me to say hell and damn and shit. So let's see, what else? I don't think I got a lot else to talk about. AppleCon, though, looking forward to teaching some people how to play Scythe and teaching some people how to play Escape from Dulce. And that's all I got for now. So I'll just say Dodada Govi. Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard crane. PSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Curmudgeon.